I'm Megan Torres, 32 years old, and for the past 10 years I've been raising my sister's 4 kids like they're my own. After mom died when I was 22, I stepped up to help Lydia navigate single motherhood. What started as temporary babysitting became a decade of sleepless nights, school runs, and sacrificing my own dreams. I'm a pediatric nurse at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, working 12-hour shifts only to come home and parent 4 kids who aren't even mine. Then one snowy evening, as I was finally leaving the hospital after an exhausting shift, Lydia dropped a bombshell over FaceTime. Meg, guess what? I'm pregnant again. 5th kid. So here's the thing. I need you to put in your notice at work. The baby's due in March. And you know how hard it is for me those first few months. You're so much better with kids anyway. I stared at my reflection in the phone screen, my worn Crocs and tired eyes telling the story of years spent as someone else's backup plan. The antiseptic smell of the hospital clung to my scrubs as I watched her smile, already planning my life without asking. Did it ever occur to you, Lydia, that I might have a life of my own? The line went dead. In the distance, a heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm, matching my racing pulse. Looking back, I can trace this mess to the day Mom died. I was 22, fresh out of nursing school, while Lydia was 25 with 2-year-old Jamie. Dad had already retreated into his bourbon bottle, and suddenly we were orphans trying to figure out how to be adults. Just help me for a few months, Lydia had begged, standing in my tiny apartment doorway with Jamie clinging to her leg, until I get back on my feet. That was 10 years ago. Mom always said I was the responsible one, the one who'd take care of everyone. Even as kids, when Lydia got in trouble, I'd cover for her. When she forgot homework, I'd help her finish it before school. Maybe that's why, when she showed up pregnant again with Ella, then the twins, I kept saying yes to just a little more help. The pattern was insidious. First it was watching Jamie while Lydia worked. Then it became pickup from daycare because she had to work late. Then doctor visits because you understand medical stuff better. Before I knew it, I was the one signing school forms, buying school clothes, staying up all night with fever and nightmares. Every day felt like a never-ending battle. My alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m., and I'd stumble to find Jamie, 10, and Ella, 8, fighting over the last Pop-Tart while the twins, Max and Mia, spilled juice across the kitchen counter. "You ate mine yesterday!" Ella shouted. I'd split the pastry, mop up juice, and braid Mia's hair before gulping lukewarm coffee and herding everyone into my Honda Civic. The drive to 3 different schools was pure chaos, Jamie blasting music, Ella complaining about homework, Max asking endless questions, and Mia singing off-key Disney songs. At work, I moved through the pediatric ward caring for other people's sick children, while knowing 4 more waited at home. Nurse Patel had been hinting about a charge nurse position, but my constant emergencies weren't helping. "Megan, we need to discuss your attendance. 3 emergency leaves this month alone." After my 12-hour shifts, I'd race home to find homework scattered everywhere and the TV cranked loud. Lydia worked nights at the call center with her boyfriend Derek, leaving with a mumbled, "Thanks for keeping everything together." My only escape came after 9 p.m. I'd try to study for my BSN degree, but staring at admission requirements at midnight felt like looking at someone else's dreams. My eyes would burn from the laptop screen until I'd doze off, waking to dead batteries. One night, Ella appeared like a small ghost. "Aunt Meg? Why do you always look so tired?" "Just trying to keep up, sweetheart." I forced a smile. She hugged me tight, and for a moment I felt needed. But then reality hit. Needed for what? This wasn't building my future. It was maintaining someone else's present. I started tracking expenses. School supplies, $47. Dance shoes, $23. Inhaler copays, $30. Grocery runs, $85 weekly. My nursing shoes had holes, but new ones cost $120 I didn't have. Derek contributed nothing except empty beer bottles. "You're so good with them," Lydia would say, whenever guilt crept in. But it wasn't praise. It was justification for a system that had absorbed my entire life. The worst part was watching my career stagnate while my nursing school classmates advanced. Sarah had become a nurse practitioner. Jessica got her MSN and moved to pediatric oncology. Maria was teaching at the university now. Meanwhile, I was still working the same floor, missing continuing education conferences because of school plays and soccer games. At staff meetings, I'd sit there exhausted while colleagues discussed research projects and career advancement opportunities. Dr. Martinez would mention new protocols, and I'd realize I'd missed the training because Ella had strep throat. The charge nurse position had been posted for months, but everyone knew I wasn't reliable enough for management. "We need consistency in leadership," Nurse Patel had said diplomatically when I'd asked about applying. The kids weren't the problem. Jamie's dry humor reminded me of Dad before the drinking. Ella's shy smiles when she understood math problems made my heart swell. Max's endless questions about everything kept me laughing despite exhaustion. Mia's clingy hugs made me feel essential to her world. But I wasn't their parent, and the weight of being everything to everyone was crushing me. I called my friend Sarah, a nurse practitioner who'd advanced while I stayed stuck. "I'm drowning, Sarah. I love them, but this isn't my life." "You're not their mom, Megan. When's the last time you applied for that BSN program?" The breaking point came during my day off. I was catching up on continuing education when Lincoln Elementary called. "Ms. Torres? We have Mia with breathing difficulties. Can't reach her mother." I raced to find Mia wheezing, then spent 2 hours in the ER at my own hospital. Colleagues watched as my personal chaos spilled into their weekend. Lydia arrived hours later, perfectly styled despite sleeping, immediately taking photos for social media. "This is so scary. #momlife." Dr. Rodriguez pulled me aside. "This is the fourth family emergency this month. It's affecting your professional standing." Later, I overheard colleagues discussing the charge nurse position. "They need someone more reliable. You know how Megan's always dealing with family drama." A week later, Lydia burst in with Derek, glowing with excitement. "I'm pregnant. 5th kid," she announced. My chest tightened. Another child when I was already stretched beyond my limits. Over dinner, she dropped the real bomb. "You're so natural with kids, Meg. We need you to go part-time at the hospital when the baby comes. Focus on childcare full-time." Go part-time? I froze. "We're both pulling extra shifts. With the baby, we can't handle everything. Plus, you could contribute $400 monthly for expenses since you live here." $400 while I was already spending my savings on their kids' needs. "I'm already doing everything. I can't cut hospital hours." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "You're using our space, eating our food. You owe us." "It's just temporary," Derek added casually. Temporary? I'd been their safety net for a decade. The next day, I called Sarah. "They want me part-time and paying rent. They're treating me like their employee." "They're using you, Megan. What about your career?" I knew she was right. That evening, I sat in my car outside a Starbucks Googling Tenant Rights Ohio and feeling pathetic that I was 32 years old and didn't even know if I had legal protection in the house where I'd lived for 3 years. Over the next few days, I found them planning my life with notebooks, schedules, budgets, timelines revolving around me quitting nursing. "We figured it all out." Lydia spread papers on the coffee table. "Weekend hospital shifts, weekday childcare. Professional childcare costs $200 monthly, so $400 rent is a bargain." They'd mapped out 3 years of my life without asking. Derek had even called daycare centers to research market rates for what I was providing free. The papers included meal planning schedules, pickup and drop-off times for activities, and a budget that treated my nursing income like it belonged to the household. My hands shook looking at their family business plan, my income budgeted, daily schedules assigned, performance reviews planned. There was even a section about improving efficiency in my childcare methods. This is insane. Lydia's face hardened. What's insane is being selfish when family needs you. Mom would be ashamed. Using our dead mother was her nuclear option. The guilt crashed over me like a wave. All those times Mom had talked about family loyalty, about taking care of each other. I started researching and discovered I was legally just a guest. They could kick me out, but I had no obligation to pay $400 monthly. That night, I called Dad for the first time in months. Maybe I hoped for some parental wisdom, some clarity about family obligations. Instead, I got slurred words and background TV noise. Your sister's always been challenging, he mumbled. Maybe it's time she figured things out herself. It wasn't the validation I needed, but it wasn't condemnation either. Jamie caught me apartment hunting. You're leaving, aren't you? This situation isn't healthy, Jamie? He nodded with painful maturity. Mom talks about you like you work for her. She told Mrs. Peterson next door that you're our live-in help. Those words cut deeper than any argument we'd had. Days later, Lydia confronted me while I helped Ella with homework. The kitchen smelled like burnt microwave dinner and unfulfilled promises. You're not pulling your weight. I asked you to step up, and you're still working full hospital shifts. I do everything: cooking, cleaning, driving daily. That's not enough. With the baby coming, we need you full-time, not chasing some career going nowhere. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum. My nursing career isn't going nowhere. It's my future. She laughed, but it sounded more like a bark. Future? You're 32, living in my house? You think you're better than us? Derek appeared with his phone, that smug expression he got when he thought he'd found a solution. Maybe we need a contract. Room and board for childcare services. My cousin's a paralegal. The word contract hit me like ice water. They wanted to legally trap me. You want to employ me? Just paperwork. You get housing, we get guaranteed childcare. And if I don't sign? Derek's shrug was practiced casual. We'll make other arrangements. The lease is in our names. The threat was clear. Sign or become homeless. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the water stain on the ceiling that had been there since I moved in, thinking about how they'd systematically removed every choice from my life until this moment. The next morning, I called Lisa Chen from Sarah's recommendation. Her office smelled like leather and confidence, everything I wasn't feeling. What they're proposing violates several labor laws, Lisa said after reviewing their draft contract. Live-in childcare has specific wage requirements they're not meeting, but more importantly, you have no legal obligation to sign anything. She handed me her card. Document everything. If they escalate harassment, we'll need evidence. I drove home feeling like I was seeing my life clearly for the first time in years. I found them in the living room with printed contracts spread across the coffee table, daily schedules broken down by 15-minute increments, performance metrics, and a clause requiring $500 payment if I terminated employment before the baby turned 2. You're trying to make me sign away 3 years of my life. The kids need stability, Derek said. They need their mother to parent them, I shot back, my voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. Lydia's face flushed red. My responsibility is growing a human. Yours is helping family. I set down the papers and looked directly at both of them. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everything look exactly as ugly as it felt. I'm not signing this. I'm moving out next week. The silence stretched until I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down. You can't abandon us. Lydia's voice cracked with what might have been genuine panic or practiced manipulation. With her, I could never tell the difference anymore. You're their mother, Lydia. It's time to be one. Derek stood up, his posture shifting to something more threatening. You've got 3 days to reconsider. After that, we need you out so we can find someone who actually wants to help this family. 3 days. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I'd never actually leave the kids I'd raised. For the first time in 10 years, they were wrong about me. I signed a lease for a studio near the hospital. The first night there, surrounded by boxes and nursing textbooks, I felt lighter than I had in years. But Lydia wasn't finished. 2 days later, Jamie called crying from a friend's phone. Mom says we can't talk to you because you abandoned us. She blocked your number. My heart shattered. This isn't forever, Jamie. I love you all. I'm just living in my own place now. The next morning, Nurse Patel called me in. Someone claiming to be your sister called saying you've been stealing medications from pediatrics. My blood went cold. That's completely false. I know, but I have to investigate. You'll need administrative leave until resolved. No pay when I'd just signed a lease I could barely afford. Lisa Chen documented Lydia's escalating harassment, false accusations, blocked contact, threatening texts. She's lost control. Classic emotional manipulation. We may need a restraining order. Over 2 weeks, Lydia called my workplace 3 more times, contacted my landlord with lies, even called my nursing school claiming falsified references. Each accusation required time and legal fees to resolve. But her desperate tactics proved my point. A responsible parent wouldn't have time for vindictive harassment. 3 months later, the harassment investigation concluded with a formal warning to Lydia. I was reinstated with back pay and an apology from hospital administration. More importantly, my colleagues finally understood what I'd been dealing with. Dr. Martinez pulled me aside one afternoon, the smell of antiseptic and floor wax familiar and comforting again. We had no idea the extent of what you were managing at home, he said. Your dedication to patient care never wavered, even under that pressure. That's real leadership. Nurse Patel approached me about the charge nurse position the following week. You showed incredible grace under pressure. That's exactly the leadership we need in pediatrics. I established Aunt Nights, Thursday evenings with planned activities at my apartment. The first time the kids visited, Mia ran straight to me and wrapped herself around my legs like she hadn't seen me in years instead of weeks. Aunt Meg, your house smells like cookies instead of baby formula. It took months of legal mediation before Lydia stopped fighting the arrangement, but eventually she realized cooperation was better than continued court battles that were costing her money she didn't have. Without me as their constant safety net, the household dynamics shifted dramatically. Derek left 2 months after I moved out, unable to handle the reality of actual parenting responsibilities. Lydia had to learn things she'd never bothered with before: helping with homework, packing lunches, managing doctor appointments, handling bedtime routines. The kids adapted in ways that surprised everyone. Jamie, suddenly the responsible one, learned to help Max with reading and make sure Ella had clean clothes for school. Ella discovered she could solve math problems on her own when no one was there to immediately rescue her. The twins learned to share, negotiate, and comfort each other during nightmares. It's different now, Jamie told me during one of our Thursday nights, his voice carrying a new maturity. Mom actually has to pay attention to us. She learned how to make spaghetti that isn't burned, and she helped Ella with her science project last week. How does that feel? Weird, but good. Like she actually wants to be our mom instead of just having us around. Baby Connor was born in March. I visited the hospital briefly, bringing flowers and staying just long enough to hold him for 20 minutes. He was tiny and perfect, with Lydia's dark hair and what might someday be her stubborn chin. He's beautiful. You're going to be a great mom to him. Lydia looked exhausted but somehow more present than I'd seen her in years. I don't know how you did it, she said quietly. One baby is completely overwhelming. I honestly don't understand how you handled 4 kids plus everything else for all those years. It was as close to gratitude as I'd ever gotten from her. You'll figure it out. You have to now. And slowly she did. The infrastructure of her life had to change without me as the foundation. She enrolled Connor in daycare, arranged carpools with other parents, learned to meal prep on Sundays, and even started attending PTA meetings. It wasn't perfect. She still occasionally tested boundaries, asking for emergency babysitting or small loans, but the system was fundamentally different. She couldn't default to calling me every time something went wrong. During Thursday visits, I watched the kids transform. They were more confident, more capable, and while they cherished our time together, they weren't desperately clinging to me as their primary source of stability. 6 months after Connor's birth, I ran into Lydia at Target. She was pushing a cart with Connor's car seat balanced on top, Max and Mia walking beside her instead of running wild through the aisles. "How's everything going?" She looked tired but grounded in a way I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. "Hard, but we're managing. The kids help more than I expected. Jamie's become like my little assistant manager." For the first time in our adult relationship, she didn't ask me for anything. No favors, no money, no emergency childcare. We talked for 5 minutes about normal things: Connor's sleep schedule, Max's improvement in reading, Ella's upcoming recital. "They're good kids," I said as we prepared to part ways. "They are. I'm finally learning how to be their mom instead of just existing in the same house." There was something like respect in her voice when she said goodbye. A year later, I stood in Jamie's school auditorium watching him receive an academic achievement award. Lydia sat in front, cheering loudly with Connor on her lap and the twins beside her. She'd made every school event since I moved out, something she'd never managed when I was handling everything for her. The auditorium smelled like floor wax and teenage ambition. Parents clutched programs and phones, documenting their children's moments of triumph. I stayed in the back, no longer the primary parent figure, but still present as the supportive aunt who'd helped shape these kids into who they were becoming. After the ceremony, Jamie found me in the crowded hallway. At 11, he was already showing signs of the young man he'd become: responsible, thoughtful, with eyes that had seen too much, but held hope anyway. "Thanks, Aunt Meg," he said, his award certificate rolled carefully in his hands. "For what, honey?" "For showing us what boundaries look like, for making Mom step up. She's actually proud of herself now, and we're proud of her too." Lydia caught my eye across the room and walked over slowly, Connor babbling against her shoulder. She looked different, tired still, but with the kind of tiredness that came from earned accomplishment rather than victimhood. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the celebration around us. "For making me figure this out. For not letting me keep using you as a crutch. The kids are proud of me now, and I forgot what that felt like. You were always capable of it. You just needed to believe you had to." As I drove home through the Columbus streets I'd traveled so many times in panic and exhaustion, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade: genuine peace. My apartment waited. Small, but mine, organized by my own choices, decorated with my nursing achievements and photos of the kids during our Thursday nights. On my desk sat my BSN program acceptance letter, scheduled to start in the fall. Next to it was a card from Dr. Martinez congratulating me on my promotion to charge nurse. The coffee mug from my last birthday, a gift from the kids that read "World's Best Aunt," held pens I actually had time to use for my own goals. I reflected on that snowy night when Lydia had demanded I quit my job for her convenience, when she'd assumed my life belonged to her family's needs rather than my own dreams. The hospital parking lot seemed like a different world now, though only 18 months had passed. The day I said no to her was the day I said yes to myself, and to a kind of love that doesn't consume everything in its path. Love with boundaries. Love that empowers rather than enables. Love that teaches people to stand on their own feet rather than lean on others until they collapse under the weight. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to rescue someone from the consequences of their choices. Sometimes saying no to family is the greatest gift you can give them. The chance to discover their own strength, their own capability, their own worth as parents and human beings. I wasn't their mother, and that was perfectly okay. I was their aunt who loved them enough to let their real parent learn how to be one, and who finally loved herself enough to build a life worth living.